All right, let's talk about a book that completely flipped the script on personal finance for millions of people. I'm talking about Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. This is the one that really made a whole generation stop and rethink literally everything they thought they knew about money.
You've probably heard this a million times, right? It's that classic advice our parents gave us. Maybe their parents gave it to them. You know the drill. Study hard, get those good grades, find a safe, high-paying job with great benefits, and you'll be set. It was the master plan for success, the safe bet.
But what if that's just plain bad advice? The whole point of this book is to challenge that idea. It argues that this old playbook isn't just a little outdated, it could actually be dangerous. It might be the very thing keeping people trapped instead of setting them free.
So the whole story is built around this really interesting premise. The author, Robert Kiyosaki, basically had two dads growing up. You have his real dad, who he calls his poor dad, and then you have his best friend's father, who becomes his rich dad. And these two guys, they had radically different ways of thinking about money.
And this right here just lays it all out so clearly. Look at the difference. On one side, you have poor dad, super educated, had a PhD, but you know what? He struggled with money his entire life. Then you've got rich dad, an 8th grade dropout, believe it or not, who ended up becoming one of the richest guys in Hawaii. It's all about mindset. Poor dad says, I can't afford it, which just shuts down your brain. Rich dad asks, how can I afford it, which forces you to think. One mindset leads to working for a company, the other to buying a company. This contrast, this is everything. It's the whole ballgame.
Okay, so how did Kiyosaki actually start learning all this stuff? Well, it definitely wasn't in his stuffy classroom. Nope. His financial education kicked off when he was just a 9-year-old kid with a real-world lesson that was designed to, kind of punch him in the gut.
So Rich Dad offers young Robert and his friend Mike a job at one of his stores. Sounds great, right? Their job was to dust off canned goods for 3 hours every single Saturday. And the pay? A whopping 10 cents an hour. Yeah, you heard that right. After just a few weeks of this, Kiyosaki was furious. He was frustrated, he felt totally ripped off, and he was ready to walk.
But here's the twist. That anger, that feeling of being exploited, that was the entire point of the lesson. Rich Dad explained that life doesn't just give you a lecture, it pushes you around. And instead of just letting it happen, he wanted the boys to feel what it's really like to work your tail off for pennies. He was teaching them to learn from life's pushes, not just get knocked over by them.
And then, just when they thought they understood, Rich Dad throws them another curveball, a huge one. He says, okay, I want you to keep working, but now for $0. Nothing. Can you imagine? What he was doing was forcing them to break out of that employee mindset. He wanted them to stop thinking about a paycheck and start using their brains to spot opportunities that were all around them.
And this whole experience was their first real lesson in how to avoid what Rich Dad famously called the rat race. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's that cycle. You get up, go to work, pay bills, and do it all over again. It starts with fear, the fear of not being able to pay your bills. So you get a job. Then the paycheck comes, and boom, desire kicks in for a nicer car, a bigger house, all that stuff. But that just leads to bigger bills, which means more fear, and the cycle just keeps going.
And the reason people get stuck, according to Rich Dad, is because they let their emotions run the show. Fear and desire. They're doing all the thinking. Fear gets you out of bed into a job you might hate, and desire makes you dream about all the shiny things you can buy. He said it's like being a donkey chasing a carrot on a stick. You're always running, but you never actually get anywhere. The real goal is to step back and use your head to make money moves, not just your gut.
So, okay, how did the boys actually get out of this trap? Well, by working for nothing. They had no choice. They were forced to open their eyes and find a way to make money that had nothing to do with getting a paycheck from Rich Dad.
And what they came up with was, honestly, it was genius. They saw that the store manager was ripping the front covers off old comic books to send back for credit and just tossing the rest in the trash. So they asked if they could have the old comics, and they got them for free. They set up shop in an empty room. They even hired Mike's little sister to be the librarian and started their own comic book library. The price of admission for all the other kids in the neighborhood? 10 cents. And get this, their little business started pulling in $9.50 a week, even when they weren't there. That was a light bulb moment. They had created something, a system, an asset that was making money for them. For the first time, their money was working for them instead of them working for money.
So this whole journey, From that awful 10-cent an hour job to their brilliant little comic book empire, it all comes down to one single core rule. This is the big one, the one that Rich Dad said is the real difference between the rich and everybody else.
And here it is, rule number 1. Rich people acquire assets. The poor and middle class acquire liabilities they think are assets. That's your entire game in a nutshell. You have to know the difference between an asset, something that puts money into your pocket, and a liability, something that takes money out of your pocket. The rich focus on buying assets. Pretty much everyone else, they're busy buying liabilities, and a lot of the time, they don't even know they're doing it.
And that really is the heart of it all, isn't it? The book argues that most of our money problems come from not truly understanding that one simple difference. So it leaves us with a really powerful question to ask ourselves. When you look at your own finances, the things you own, are they actually making you wealthier? Do you really know the difference?